Spain's King Felipe, Queen Letizia, and government officials were given a furious reception by enraged flood survivors during their visit to Valencia. The royals were pelted with mud and heckled by a crowd in the eastern Spanish region where deadly floods have killed more than 200 people. Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez fled from the scene during an official visit to Paiporta in one of the hardest hit areas where more than 60 people perished and thousands of livelihoods were lost.
Confronted with anger and frustration, Spain's King Felipe and Queen Letizia visit the town of Paiporta near Valencia. More than 60 people died here after flash flood turned its streets into rivers. A hostile crowd greeted them with cries of asesino, or killer in English, and some protesters threw objects and mud at them, laying bare a mounting sense of abandonment.
The dead are still in our garages. Our neighbours are looking for loved ones. We just want our politicians to come and help. We just want help to cope. Felipe, you should not feel proud of being the king. You should feel proud of your people who have acted in solidarity with us. Everyone except all of you.
More than 200 people have died in the floods and thousands have lost their homes, destroyed by the wall of water and mud. Many people still don't have drinking water 5 days after the flood struck. Help has been slow in reaching where it's most needed, and many believe the tragedy could have been avoided if flood warnings had been issued in time.
I have real stories of people that didn't even get the alarm when they were already drowning in their garage, and that they thankfully made it alive. But you know, surviving, they said we didn't even have the alarm until we got out and we received the alarms of that heavy rain was coming, but nobody was warned.
Falta muchísima ayuda.
We need a lot of help. As volunteers, we can clean, but we need military help with this. This is wild. On TV, you only see 1% of what's going on. If you walk the streets of Paiporta, it looks like a war zone.
Most of the cleanup of the layers and layers of mud and debris has been done by residents and thousands of volunteers. The full extent of the devastation is still unknown.
We do not know how many people are still missing, and we have to be absolutely rigorous about that. The number of people who have died is already very high, and we will use our official channels to issue any new information we have.
Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez was meant to join the King and the Queen on their Valencia tour, but he fled the scene as soon as the angry crowd approached.
And we can now speak to journalist Guy Hedgecoe, who joins us from Madrid. So, Guy, as we just mentioned, Spain has issued a new red weather warning in some areas for tonight. So what does this mean for the already devastated region?
Well, I think this is just what people didn't want to hear in the region of Valencia. This is a red alert for some areas along the coast of the Valencia region. We're told there's going to be extremely heavy rainfall. It won't necessarily last very long as the rainfall we saw just a few days ago, but it is expected to be very intense. And clearly that could hinder these rescue attempts and the efforts by emergency services. And it's certainly not what the local people there need at this time.
I also wanted to ask you about those dramatic scenes that we saw earlier today with angry residents throwing mud at the Spanish royals and also at Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez. It looked as if the Prime Minister was whisked away, but that the royals didn't immediately leave the scene. What happened?
Yeah, it was real drama. I mean, King Felipe and Queen Letizia were visiting a town called Paiporta along with Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez and the president of the regional government of Valencia, Carlos Mazón, Paiporta is seen as the place which has been hardest hit by these floods, because it is already confirmed that more than 60 of its inhabitants have been killed in those floods, and many, many more people still missing from the town. So people came out. Many of them were shouting insults at the king and at the prime minister and at the regional leader. Many of them were throwing mud at all three of them as well. You mentioned there, Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez was whisked away by a security detail. He left in a car relatively soon when those scenes started. But the king did stay on, and he tried to engage with some of the people, many of whom were shouting at him. And there were scenes of him trying to talk to some of these people, trying to persuade them that everything possible was being done for them. And there were some scenes of him even hugging some of the people in the crowds there. But mud was also thrown at him. And eventually he did leave the scene with Queen Letizia and with the regional leader, Carlos Mazón, as well.
We also just heard that clip from the Spanish local minister saying that authorities don't know how many people are still missing. How is that possible?
Well, I mean, I think people understand that this is an unprecedented tragedy, and we've been seeing the death toll rise day after day. And yet dozens of people are believed to be missing still. And I think that's because of the nature of these flash floods. Many people were washed away in their cars by the floods very suddenly. We've seen pictures of cars piled one on top of the other. Many bodies have been recovered from cars already, but there are many other cars in areas which are more difficult to reach, where the authorities believe that there are many bodies left. Also, that there's a lot of debris covering up, or believed to be covering up, bodies potentially. So today, for example, we saw the first bodies being recovered from the beaches of Valencia, from beneath the debris there. And so the expectation is it's quite likely we could see more bodies being recovered, for example, from the coastline of Valencia in the coming days.
That was journalist Guy Hedgecoe in Madrid for us. Guy, many thanks indeed for your reporting. We appreciate it.